Dice, an instrumental part in tabletop games. Now, there's a quite controversial topic revolving around dice, and it is Game Master fudging. So what this means is basically a Game Master will roll the dice behind their Game Master or Dungeon Master screen, and they get a specific roll, which will result in whatever consequences that roll has. But sometimes the roll comes up a very inconvenient number, and the consequences might end up being something they weren't expecting or something that doesn't fit with the story. And so the Game Master has the urge to maybe change the dice roll a little bit. Now, some people are very adamant that you should never, ever fudge the dice. Whatever it is, you take that result. And then some people are a little bit more lenient and saying that there are certain circumstances in which fudging the dice is okay and sometimes necessary for the overall enjoyment of the game. I've been a player for both circumstances in which the Game Master does fudge the dice from time to time, or there will be a Game Master who refuses to ever change the dice roll. And I'll say that both times playing role-playing games, I did have a lot of fun. So whatever you decide is best for your style is going to be okay at the end of the day. And before we go on, just a gentle and friendly reminder to subscribe and hit the bell notification if you want to know every time a new video comes out. Alright, I'm just going to be upfront about this. I am pro-fudge. I think there are certain circumstances in which slightly changing the dice roll can make for a better playing experience for everyone at the table. But before I get into those specific examples of where I find it helpful, I'm going to give you the perspective of the other side, which is those who say you should never ever change the dice roll. The number one thing that I hear from people is that it ruins the integrity of the game. When you have dice rolls on both the player side and the Game Master side, there's a level of fairness across the board. You know that whatever happens is really up to the fate of the dice. And there's no swaying the game one way or the other. You're both just reacting to whatever the dice are giving you. The other thing that's often brought up is the feeling of success and whether it's real or not. So if you know that your Game Master fudges the dice, how do you know that when you're trying to persuade someone you actually successfully did and it's not just the Game Master wanting the game to go a certain way? Or in combat, what if you hit someone and do the final blow and you have this great experience, but it wasn't real because the Game Master changed the dice roll? These points, while valid, I think they all kind of revolve around the fact that you have to know when your Game Master is fudging to be able to have a different experience based on the result of that fudge. So if most of the time your Game Master is using whatever the dice roll says, and there's occasionally a little change, but you don't know when that's happening, I don't think that really changes your goal or your storytelling or anything within the game. You don't really know when it's happening, so you don't have any perception to know when you shouldn't feel valid in your success. So ultimately, I think it's on the Game Master to make sure that they're just good at fudging the dice and they're not obvious about it. You might not tell your players that you fudge, or you might tell them you do, but I would never tell them the exact moment in which you fudge or don't fudge. Have you ever had a Game Master be super obvious about when they're changing the dice roll? That's not a good situation, but let me know down in the comments if you've ever had that. So let's get into my personal opinion and how I play the game. So the first thing that I consider when thinking about fudging dice rolls is really the reason why I play RPGs. And for me personally, it's because I just love playing the game and I want to have fun and hang out with my friends. That's it. I just want to have fun. And so ultimately, when there's a situation where a die roll would be extremely detrimental to the fun and enjoyment that we're having, I find that it's okay to change that dice roll a little bit. And I'll tell you a few specific examples where I find it necessary to do this. And the first is really thinking about the overall balance at the table. So players, in my opinion, should always have the chance to both succeed and fail, because that's what makes it exciting and fun, and them not knowing if they're going to progress a certain way or go down a certain path is because at every point they had the option to both succeed and fail. If there's ever a circumstance in which they don't have those two options because it's weighted one way or the other, then there's no longer balance, and that usually means that their fun is taken away. Balance equals fun. Unbalanced, not fun, not enjoyable. So this could be one way or the other. A specific example that I see a lot is monsters. So for me as a game master, I will put villains or different monsters up against my players, and there might be times where I under or overestimate my players' abilities. So if I create a monster that is way too overpowered for my players, and then I realize a few rounds into combat that this is not going to go well, then I can make some slight fudge roll adjustments so that the players aren't just getting completely obliterated because I overestimated my players' abilities. All right, the monster swings at you with his claw. Let's see. A regular success. Ooh, hard success. He does 22 damage. I'm dead then. Alright, the monster swings at you with his claw. Let's see. A regular success. He misses. And you also hear the sound of a horn in the background. The monster suddenly goes quite alert and runs toward the sound of the horn. Ooh, that was close. We barely escaped that. So oftentimes when I'm about to fudge a dice roll, it's because of something that I did. I created something that wasn't balanced for the game, and I have to adjust for that. And this is especially true of something that I created that's too overpowered, results in a player death. It's high stakes there and not a very comfortable or fun situation for anyone. So just be careful and make sure that you always have some sort of balance from the game master and player perspective, and that they always have the chance to both succeed and fail. That way you have a little bit of a gauge of whether it's appropriate to fudge your dice roll or not. Another situation in which I find myself potentially fudging dice is to reward player creativity. So oftentimes there'll be specific maneuvers in combat or specific very well thought out plans that they're trying to execute. And the roll of one single dice just doesn't make it enough for them to be able to succeed in that creative endeavor. Occasionally, if your player, especially if it's someone who is more introverted or has trouble speaking up in the group and they're finally kind of showing that they want to be creative and participate, I think there are specific situations in which you want to reward that creativity. So if you're slightly off of a dice roll and it's one or two off and they would have succeeded, but it just didn't quite make it, sometimes it's okay to reward that creativity. The other way to do this without fudging the dice is just a fail forward approach, which I like to use as well. So maybe they do something really creative and they want to get through a window, let's say, and they have this nice little mechanical lock set and really want to open it a certain way to be quiet, but they don't succeed. Maybe they do succeed at opening the window, but they make more noise. So they're able to progress with their plan, but there's a little bit of consequences as well. So just keep that in mind as an option too. You don't always have to fudge dice roll to be able to reward creativity. You can also use the fail forward approach. And the last way that I'd really consider fudging the dice is if it progresses the story in a more dramatic or more exciting way. So let's say there's a major plot point developing. You're talking to the mayor and you find that he's actually the bad guy. Pretty cliche, but we'll go with it for now. And he has this grand master plan and you're just about to unravel it and you need to do this persuade roll. If you fail the persuade roll, everything stops there and it just doesn't look like the story is going to move forward in a nice, productive way. But if you succeed, then you'll be able to expand the story and have many different paths, and it adds to the tension that everyone's feeling at the table. There are certain times in which I would slightly adjust the roll just to get the story moving in a good collaborative way. I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we're doing, right? We're playing with the players, we're using the game master description and the different settings and putting it all together to tell a story. So ultimately, I think it's okay to sometimes change the dice in those instances. So let's talk about frequency. I did say a couple of times to make sure that you don't do this too often. For about a 4-hour session, I find myself fudging the dice anywhere from 0 to 2 times. There are some sessions where I never do this, and that's perfectly fine. Everything is good. There are failures, there are successes, everything's balanced, everyone's having fun. No need to fudge the dice. But there are certain sessions in which I will fudge probably up to 2 times, but you'll see that even 2 times in a 4-hour session is not that many, depending on how often that you roll the dice. So make sure that this is used in moderation if you do choose to go down this path. The other thing to mention is sometimes in which you should never fudge the dice. And again, this is my personal opinion, but for me, anytime there is a critical success or a critical failure, I do not fudge the dice. To me, that is the dice saying, this is what's happening. You have to figure out a way to progress the story and move forward. So I never fudge the dice on crits. Ultimately, it's up to you and your specific style. You can choose to fudge the dice or not. It's up to you, and as long as you and your players are having fun, honestly, that is all that matters. So I hope this helped clarify my personal opinions on fudging the dice and when it's appropriate to use it and when not. So there you have it. Why I think fudge in moderation is okay. Just like real fudge. What's your favorite kind of fudge? I think mine's cookies and cream. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Click over here or somewhere for my next video and see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.